Today I'm making the last of these social distance Halloween party beers, and it's taken me 3 times to decide on what style to make, and we're going to talk about that next. Welcome to Big Monster Brewing, the Anvil Foundry edition. I am Matt, and in this episode I'm making that final beer for our social distance, come pick up a 4-pack of cans Halloween party. I'll talk about the style in just a second, but before I do, let me say if you're new to the channel or new to the video, or if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell as well. There'll be more Anvil Foundry Brewing following this, regardless of the fact that the Halloween party will probably have come and gone by the time the next video comes out. So this 4th beer for the Halloween party, it's a style I had changed my mind I think 3 times. What is it? Yeah, we're up to this is the 4th decision I made. I wanted to make something that was different from the other 3, obviously. And the first thing I thought of, for no other reason other than it was different and it's a good style and I wanted to take a shot at making it, was a California Common. But I didn't have any I didn't have enough Northern Brewer hops. I had very few, like maybe enough for 1 charge, but I would need at least 3 or 4 to do the recipe I wanted. So even though there's a home brew shop not far from here at all, I kind of wanted to get through the inventory I built during this pandemic and start kind of thinning it out so I can start getting fresh ingredients back in. So I started to take a look at what I had on hand, and I could very easily make a Kolsch, which was my next choice. But then that's not terribly far from the German Pils that we have for the party. They're not the same, obviously. There's distinct differences, but when you have a flight of 4, they're pretty close. So I wanted something further away from the other styles than that. So my next idea was to do a coconut chocolate porter that I've done before, and that was kind of the decision not to do that, was that it's been done before. So now I've given myself 2 criteria, make it different and make it one I hadn't done before for Halloween. So now I just looked at my inventory and kind of just looked for anything for inspiration, and I saw one of my malt containers that said rye malt, and I go, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a rye ale. So that's what this episode is about. Now, when talking about a rye ale, you've got a long range of a definition of that. You can make it 100% rye, that's very labor intensive. Rye gets very viscous the more you add to a grist, but it can be done. Or just any amount of rye, and you can say it's a rye ale because there's rye in it. You can call any beer you want. Doesn't mean it's right, but I guess in your definition, if you just toss in a couple ounces of rye, you have a rye ale. What I'm going for is a noticeable addition of rye. I don't want it to be 100% rye. I don't even want it to be half rye. I just want enough rye in there so that you can taste there's something different about this style than all the other ones I'm tasting. And I want that main characteristic to come from the rye. So there's a significant portion, but it's not heavy at all. And to actually get to what those numbers are, let's talk about the grist. So we're starting off with a pretty sizable base malt with pale malt at 76.5%. Then to that, we're going to add the rye, and we got 8% of this grist is going to be the rye malt. To that, we're adding 8% of Crystal 20L malts. Then we have 4% biscuit malts, 2% CARAPILS, then 1% acidulated malt to kind of balance out the pH right from the start that the rye is kind of going to throw a little off balance. Then the last 0.5% is Carafa 2 to give a touch more color to kind of broaden the palate of the flight as people are going to be tasting them. This batch is going to be 2.5 gallons that I'm mashing with the 6.5 gallon Anvil Foundry, and then I'm going to boil this one with propane. For this beer, I'll rest the mash for 60 minutes at 150 degrees. I get the temperature going, and once I reach 150, I mash in, and I get the recirculation going for the entire mash. So as usual, with this time to wait, I now get the boil additions ready. In the same spirit of thinning out my inventory, that's kind of what I'm doing to select my hops in this as well. I'm going through hops that I have in storage that are on hand, is really what it comes down to. And all that starts with 17.5 IBUs of Magnum at 60 minutes. Then I'm going to add 6.5 IBUs of Cascade at 30 minutes. Then I'm going to have some fun bringing in some Australian and New Zealand hops by using 9 IBUs of Vic's Secret at 5 minutes, another 2 IBUs of Vic's Secret at 1 minute, and then to help bring out and accentuate that rye flavor, I'm going to do a very small dry hop addition just at the end of fermentation, and that is 0.3 ounces of Rakua hops for about 4 days. And I also have my usual boil additions, which is a small addition of WHIRLFLOC at 2 minutes, but before that, we have the yeast nutrients added at 10 minutes. At the end of that 60-minute mash rest, I lift the malt pipe out of the sweet wort and sparge with a gallon of 170-degree water. And when I'm done that, I transfer everything out of the Anvil into the kettle, put that kettle on the propane burner, and get the boil going. This was a full 60-minute boil, and at the end, I chill the wort down below 90 degrees and transfer it to a 3-gallon carboy. And then I move it to one of my fermentation fridges until it reaches 65 degrees, and then I can pitch the starter I made of Wyeast 1056 American Ale yeast. By day 8, fermentation looked like it was going to finally slow down, so that's when I added the dry hops. By day 10, I raised the temperature to 68 degrees to do a diacetyl rest. 2 days after that, I cold crashed it, kegged it, carbonated it with the Blickman Quick Carb, canned it, and now am ready to taste it. It is tasting time, and also time to discuss the name, the Amulet of Beer, which you probably did see in the opening. Again, these Halloween beers this year are being named after things in Halloween Horror Nights, things that kind of have a community history to them. I'm not sure what you would describe this one, so I'm not sure how to describe this one. What it comes down to is that the imagery, that skull with a candle, it was 2 years ago in Halloween Horror Nights, they had put out a thing called the Amulet of Fear, which was a skull from the top, I guess, jawless skull, I should say, up with a candle on it that lit up and vibrated and did, well, that's really all it did. I was going to say it did all these things. It didn't do all these things, and that was kind of the joke about it in the end. And you went to different sections of the park during the event, and it did a different sequence and vibration pattern based on the transmission from that station or whatever. I guess it was, I was going to say huge failure, but that seems like I'm really just kind of putting it down, but it kind of really was a huge failure. This thing started off like $30 or something like that, and they were down to 10 or less by actually not even by the end of the event, halfway through the event. And then last year, at inside the merchandise store, there was actually, it was covered with a bunch of promotional, posters, Halloween-esque type posters, like roadside carnivals, things like that. That was the theme of the one wall in the one area, and there was a joke poster about the Amulet of Fear. So it was even a joke to the creators in the art and design department themselves. So yes, I guess kind of a failure, and the community was not kind to it like immediately when it was released 2 seasons ago. So I'm trying to redeem the idea and going with Amulet of Beer for the rye ale. Let's see if I've done any redemption. All right, here we go. All right, we'll talk about the color first because I did want a different color, and it's lighter than the Dracula Owes Me Money and definitely darker than That's My Gold. It's actually probably closer to Fog Machine, but a little clearer, but not entirely clear. I didn't do any findings on this either. With the dry hopping, I was like, yeah, I'll let it be a little opaque. It's not as hazy as the IPA, but it's not clear, and I didn't expect it to be. So the color is coming out to a rich gold to orange, but not quite amber. I'd say the aroma is predominantly late edition hops and a little bit of that dry hop. The dry hop was fairly negligible compared to the late edition hops, but I definitely get that late edition hop without that kind of almost very overwhelming big charge of dry hops like I did with Fog Machine. It's a little more subtle, little citrus zesty, a little touch of floral. There's a little bit of the sweet from the malt coming through from the caramel malts, and then the base malts are lending into that aroma as well. I don't really know what to look for in aroma with rye malt, so I'm expecting if it's going to come through to be in the taste from my experience. There's only one way to find out if that's true. It's quite surprisingly citrusy, orange, but not sweet orange, and not bitter orange, in between the two. So it's not sweet, and I do get that distinctive rye taste. There's a lot of people describe it as spicy. I think I don't get it as spicy. I'm not saying they're wrong by any means. I think that's just not how my palate picks it up. But there is a distinct, it's a unique bitterness to me, to my palate. And it's not from hops. It's distinctively not hop bitterness. It is always from that rye. And it's there, but it's not pushing out all the other flavors, which is kind of what I wanted, if not almost exactly what I wanted. It's a really good base for the malts. The malts are clean. The fermentation is extremely clean. That little bit of crystal sweet is coming through without being a distinct caramely or sugary or anything like that. It's just barely there. The big thing is that malt character being supported by the hops. This is really, really actually more complex than I expected, but also quite tasty. And there's almost a refreshingness to it because of that very, very clean. I almost said lagering because it kind of reminds me of that. It doesn't taste like a lager. There's a crispness to it like a lager, but it's not. It's an ale. So just that very clean fermentation is really, I think, helping everything in here. This has been a nice, kind of a surprise, I'll say. Yeah, it's unmistakably rye. That combination of hops is actually fantastic. This is the first time I've used strictly Vic Secret for aroma and flavor, and I was also kind of curious how that would come out, and I really like that, and I think I'm going to be using that again in a few things, because if it's mostly that and a little bit of the dry hop that's giving me that citrus flavor, it's a citrus flavor I really like. I've always had kind of trouble balancing a citrus flavor being too orange or too grapefruit, too one thing. Now, I will say it's predominantly orange, but it's not the orange I'm used to. It's kind of that in between. So I'll only take one more taste and wrap up, because I think this has gone on longer than I expected. That's just a really nice beer. That's really good. If you haven't played with rye before, I'd suggest doing about that amount. Keep it around 10% or under, but above, like, say, 5%, somewhere in that range, to get an idea of what you like in rye. This 8% is just about perfect, if not actually perfect for this particular beer. So I'm really pleased with this. So I think we got, I was worried the Fog Machine was going to be the crowd, might not be the crowd pleaser because of the uniqueness of the flavors I was getting. I think this might make up for it, because this is really good. And I think this is one that people, it's going to please, well, be a crowd pleaser. People that like different styles and people that like beer, because it's kind of in both worlds in a good way. So cool. I think the important part is I just realized is I redeemed the Amulet of Fear's reputation by turning it into a beer on a YouTube video that 30 people will see. But I tried. All right. That is it. I'm going to go enjoy this. And I will say, of course, thank you for listening. And I will be back with more videos post-Halloween. I have a fall beer coming very soon. It's probably the next video. And I'm thinking with Christmas coming, there might be some people getting Anvil Foundries for the first time, first use. So I'm kind of planning out and hoping to have by the holiday season kind of a guide on how to jump into the Anvil, from what to do to come up with a recipe to brewing, the fermentation and packaging. I might even split that between bottles and kegs. It just kind of seems like there might be the opportunity to put that set of videos out there that might help people get up to speed faster, because the Anvil Foundry is a fantastic device in my opinion. And if you know how to use it from the get-go, I think you're going to get even more out of it when you start. Just an idea. We'll see. But until then, I'll say again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in that next episode.